So, ladies and gentlemen, Arnold Bloom. Arnold.
Hi. Give you some history. This was offered as a course to students this spring. We had about 55 students. I also taught this as a course to, that was mostly freshmen, as you'll see if we have a chance to look at the detailed surveys that were done by the Educational Assessment Group at UC Santa Barbara. I also taught the same course to graduate students in Israel, and the nice thing about talking about climate change and the various breadths that we cover is that indeed we are all freshmen when it comes to one aspect of it. So you may be so I have a lot of expertise in the biological sciences, but I was very much a novice when it talked about international law, when one talked about economics. And so, in fact, no one feels like they're actually being talked down to. And it's a great topic for getting people into the breadth of transdisciplinary work. So from those efforts and the fact that I got involved in a project to try to develop a national curriculum on climate change for the United States funded through the NSF, we felt that the best way to reach the populace of the United States, since at that time it was a lull, only about 1/3 of adults in the United States believed that climate change was really occurring and that it was a phenomenon that was of human origin. So we felt that having something that would have broader impact was pretty important. So I started putting the materials that we were developing into what has been, most of you people here are well aware of the term MOOC, which stands for Massive Open Online Course. And so this is the website where I put the materials. This is not obviously just, I've had a lot of help from wonderful people, some of them sitting in this room like Dan. Rosemary is also someone I need to thank, and helped me with educational design, which is not my forte. But I'd like to show you some of the things we're doing. So here, this is open to the public now. We have the same bits are referenced by our learning management system, which we're now using Canvas. We've used several. We've from the standard SmartSite to the alpha product of Sakai that we tried to use last year, and now we're using Canvas. But we decided a simple one would be, and a simple site would be better for people. It's also being used by a colleague of mine in Boston, and it's kind of interesting to contrast the student uses in Boston to the student uses here. One thing you notice that winter in Boston, we find that the students in Boston are so bored, they're spending more time per video, about double per video than the students here in Davis. And I don't know if it's the clientele is different, but I think it's mainly the weather is different. So let me show you some of the things you're able to do online you really can't do in person. So here, let's start this going. You'll notice this is done in Captivate, and we're using, through Dan's expertise, we're using YouTube as the video player, which has a lot of advantages, one of which is that we can integrate subtitles very nicely, and that helps. Welcome to the course, Global Climate Change, Convergence of Disciplines. Shown here is the front cover of our textbook. I'd like to present you with your first challenge. Identify what is depicted in the cover photo. I imagine some of you are disappointed that your instructor is not Al Gore. But consider this. Would you rather take a course from a politician named Gore or a course from a botanist named Bloom? Perhaps it's better that I not know your answer. This video segment will cover 3 major topics. First, the definition of climate. Second, the rudiments of numerical chart reading. And third, the importance of climate. Okay, there's actually about 12 hours of video, so obviously in the time we have here, we're not going to be able to cover just even, I'm going to show you some of the things I'm proud of and some of the things you can do with technology you can't do in person. There's a couple of things that went on here that are important both for educational purposes as well as for the production. One is that it's important to show your face and introduce yourself to the student. And it's been, a number of people have done studies that just showing a PowerPoint slide and not having the person there is not as effective as having a thumbnail of the person. Also, it's also good to show the textbook. Also, I have a background. I have a green screen. The equipment I use for making the materials, I had a video camera, a high-definition video camera. Now they're available for the order of about $250 of the quality that I have. I bought a teleprompter, a green screen, studio lighting, a microphone, all on the cheap. I think the total sum I have a budget is about $300. So rather than to use the studios here, which are excellent, and you have access to wonderful people like that gentleman in the back who's watching me on the monitor, I find it's easier to do it on your own without having them being served by someone else. And then you can retake and take at your leisure. And so I've done that. I set up one of the bedrooms in my house as a studio. It's not a special room at all. And all the materials, I said I can give you a list of what you can order, and some of you have and have found it suitable. So I shoot in front of a green screen and I have my backdrop. One thing I do always show is something that is intriguing, and at the end of each video I say what it actually is. Anybody want to make a guess what that backdrop is? It's a cover of my textbook, but it also is. Anybody know what this is?
A bed sheet.
A bed sheet. That could be. It's actually the top of an oil drum, surrounded by the number of oil barrels that we go through in several seconds in the United States. It's the photographer has a very interesting series on it. It had very high impact, and so we used it for the cover. So what I do is use a standard high-definition camera. I said it costs about $250 now. I take that footage and I put it through. As faculty members here, you can get a very inexpensive package from Adobe called it, and I would go with the Master Collection. It's about $650 if you go through your department. And that includes Photoshop, Dreamweaver, Adobe Premiere Pro is for video, After Effects, I'll show you some things I did with those. You can also do Photoshop and Illustrator. And all these materials can be done with that software. And so in fact, for essentially an investment of about $1,000, you can be on your own. And then you need a fairly high-speed computer. And that I can't overemphasize. So I was doing it on this laptop, which was fairly powerful at its time. It'd take about 2 hours to render the video. I bought a faster machine, desktop machine, and it now takes about 5 minutes. And so you do need to have access to, because now the video software will take advantage of the video card for computing power. So if you want details, I can go into that, but obviously in the time available, I won't be able to do that. Okay. I wanted to show you some things you can do in video you can't do. So definitely talking about listing out what you're going to cover in the lecture. You can do that nicely, as I begin to do here. Let's see if I can. We found that when you have videos, you can actually follow student use. And it's amazing how short the attention span of students is. We find they mostly, the video segments were on the order of about 12 minutes initially. We found that was way too long. We found that they really, particularly people in the United States, in Davis, were not listening for more than about 3 minutes. That was their attention span. And this really brings to home the idea is, how do we subject them to 50-minute lectures? They are really not with us. It's really, when you know. So I've divided each 12-minute segment into about 4 and have them interrupted by, so there's a 3-minute segment here, and then they have a quiz they have to take. Over the past 15 years in Davis, California, and it's pulled from a pool of questions, so that essentially each of these lectures has about on the order of 50 questions, and it randomly takes them and it mixes up the answers. So they really can't compare very well. So let's see if I can actually answer this, which is always a test. We have relatively hot, dry summers, cool, wet winters. This statement describes climate. So if you get it right, you get submit, and it says yay. If it doesn't, it says you get red, and it gives you another chance to get it right. Okay, and then it goes into sometimes data manipulation. So this class has people who are not science majors. The idea of graphical information is a new one to them. So I want them to at least be able to look at that graphical information. I'm assuming what I'm seeing on my screen is what you're seeing here. So if it looks like anything's weird. So Adobe Captivate, which we're using for doing this manipulations, is clumsy, but it can be manipulated. So here is the weather records in terms of precipitation in Davis versus month for various years. And I explained this in the lecture. Won't have time to do this. Many of you are comfortable with this type of information. But you can go over and you can click and just see 1998, just see 2002. And it goes into saying, well, if you're planning a wedding in Davis, when should you, and it's going to be outdoors, what month should you choose and why? And then it goes into the next thing is it gives you a quiz question. Precipitation in Davis in May 2001 totaled, and so you're going to say, I don't know that. How? So you have to go back here and actually go back and manipulate the data. And what month did I say there? May. Okay. And that would be, and you go forward, and the answer is 0. So you actually the student actually has to use that data and show that they have some facility with it. So they have to do this every 3 minutes. And then it goes on to another one.
An example of the importance of climate is its role in military matters. The United States military times major actions in Iraq and Afghanistan based on the climate in these areas. Failure to consider climate can be catastrophic. Some of you may recognize this portrait of Napoleon. Napoleon invaded Russia in 1812. This chart, often judged the most impressive of all time, tells the story of this invasion from the French perspective. Shown is a map of Western Russia with the path of the French advance in brown and the retreat in black. The width of the path and the numbers indicate the size of the French army at various locations. The branch points indicate where some troops separated during the advance and later rejoined the retreat. Temperatures are in red and are linked to the path of retreat. The background music is from Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture, which also tells the story of this invasion, but from the Russian perspective. The Grande Armée of France crossed the Niemen River from Poland into Russia on June 23, 1812, with nearly 450,000 troops. The Russian army avoided major engagement with the French and retreated further and further into Russia, scorching the earth behind them. Thus, the French found it difficult to find food for themselves and their horses. The Russians finally engaged the French in battle.
Okay, this goes on for another minute and a half, and it makes the point that it's really not anything about the military, it's about climate, and that the French should have known that Russia is cold. And in fact, the Germans made the same mistake a century later, and so it's ignoring climate, you do it at your own peril. So it goes through that, but it also gets them to think about graphical representation of data for people who may not have done that in the past. So I'm going to go back. Let's see if I can go back. Okay, and show you some other things you can do. So here is all 48 of the lectures. This is a simple site, and we use something similar for the class, but this I find more direct, explains what climate is. There are topics there for each week. So you go through the quarter and each week, and you have a module for each week. You have learning objectives. You have assignments for each week, and so we have them first go through what climate is in Davis, and then they make them look at their hometown and look at what indeed they have to download the data for their hometown and look at not just the weather month by month, but they have to look at running averages and get an idea of what climate is, which is long-term weather patterns on the order of about a decade. And then they have to compare their results with another student. So, And we try to pair students with people, well, we're mostly from California, but we do have people from Barrow, Alaska, who are, we have a couple of American Indian tribal colleges involved. And so we're eventually going to have our students from the various institutions having to communicate with one another and say, you know, are the climate trends that people are observing in Barrow, Alaska different than the ones that they're observing in Los Angeles? And the answer is yes. But having them realize that, get them out of their own little world and seeing how much things change. Then we have them read about a climate change model. That's what a GCM is. And then and this is basically an exercise in futility. I mean, they have to read an article that's way above their pay grade. I mean, these are models that perhaps one person, no one in the world understands them in entirety. So, and I keep making the point, the reason they're going to be paid above minimum wage is that they can deal with data that's really complex. And so how do they extract enough information about such a complex topic that they can get something useful out of it? And then they have to play with polar bears, which is the poster child of the climate change effect on biology. And then they have to adapt the species the following week. They have to calculate their carbon footprint, and then they have to propose how they would reduce their carbon footprint and try to do that for a day.
What do you do with play with polar bears?
Oh, this is just looking at trends in population size with polar bears and learning how climate change is affecting their
So it's a data exercise in polar bear.
yes,
Yeah.
and looking at what the literature is understanding that, because it prepares them for doing it on their own species, which each one has a different species. So,
What software do you use to get those lists, those columns?
oh, this is just simple HTML through Dreamweaver. I use simple so it would be the same on all platforms, and that's why it's not fancy. So, but as part of if you buy the whole package, you'll get Dreamweaver, and you can do an HTML. There's not even cascading style sheets on this. It's as simple as I can make it. They can go through the midterms. So this pulls all the quizzes from the first 22 lectures, and they can test themselves, and it'll extract that. And I won't do that because I'll show you some things you can do in video you can't do in real life. So again, in my last few minutes, I'll try to wow you.
In the next several,
Okay.
many
Here we go. This is talking about isotopes, and I'm trying to get across the idea that,
decay
here we go, that what's the difference between a heavy isotope and a light stable isotope, and how do they behave? And that, in fact, you can use isotopes as a proxy measure for temperature, because the heavy isotopes will not change phase as rapidly as a light isotope. And that can be used to advantage. So here I have me as a heavy isotope. And you can see it's very difficult for me to change phase. Doing my Superman impression. Oh, it wasn't obvious. And here I am very thin, my light isotope impression. And of course I can change phase very quickly.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so they can pick which, so essentially they go on the screen, they pick that, or they can skip it. The last thing I'll show you, because my time is short, is another thing you can do is, I was talking about how climate change in the past has affected plant life, and that's because CO2 changes have changed the type of plants we find and that this has affected herbivores, such as horses. And so I decided that I'd have to, rather than have me talk about it, I would have,
this video segment,
again, there's me.
putting everything together, stable isotope data indicates that lower atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations 8 to 6 billion years ago were responsible for a major turnover in mammalian herbivores. The shift in diet from C3 to C4 plants is evident from the abrupt rise in delta C13 values of fossil teeth from this period. The shift in herbivores is evident from the fossil record, where teeth from this period had higher crowns, which are better suited for extensive grinding required to extract nutrients from the bundle sheaths of C4 plant.
Okay, and hopefully they understand that. And then they have a quiz on it. fossilized, so they have to go back. And they can spend as much time answering that as well. So, yes, this is timing is okay?
Oh, yeah, you're doing fine.
Okay, so let's open it for questions since yes, please.
Can you talk about presence and how you thought about that and actually describe the whole idea of presence real quickly?
Well, as I said, that having it just these videos rolling without a person there makes it seem like there is not, it's disembodied. And in fact, when we did, we do have, let me see if I can get this, as John Young from UC Berkeley, UC Santa Barbara did a fairly extensive survey of the students. And it amazed that they did feel connection to me, even though they had, that it felt like a personal interaction, even if it was a video. One thing you can do in video, a couple of things we've learned. One is that the information density of video is much higher than the information density of a live lecture. It's about threefold. So, for example, Coursera finds that when students are, most of their courses are just recorded lectures. And they can trace that the students are playing back those recorded lectures at 3 times normal speed. You can do the software doesn't change the pitch, so they're not, it doesn't make them sound like chipmunks. But they do play it, we find that people are playing back my lectures at about half speed. But they can replay it back over and over again. But to do that production value, they take about 2 minutes to do 1 minute of video. I take about 4 hours to do about 1 minute of video. And it's partly because I'm a novice at it, but it's also that I have professionals take about 4 hours per minute of video as well. So the big impediment is that it takes a commitment. And that's where, if you're going to do a commitment, it should be more for than just one time a year. And so my course is probably going to be taught 5 times a year at this campus. We're talking about making it available. It's already available, but doing it through one of the open universities like edX or Coursera. The campus is trying to negotiate with them now. Yes, Jim?
Yeah, no, I mean, these are just, every time I see yours, it's just really impressive. But, I mean, you get back to the logistics, you know, and 4 hours for 1 minute. I mean, so that if you scaled back, to put, you know, music and talking horse and, you know, all this takes time. And so, I mean, can you scale back? Not you, but I mean, for people that can't put in 4 hours?
Well, how long is it taking you?
No,
Jim Carey, I don't know if you presented here, but he's doing something similar. How long does it take you to?
No, I mean, I cannot put that kind of time. It takes a long time, there's no question.
Yeah.
I don't think 4 hours, but there's a big commitment here, there's
Yeah.
no question.
Yes.
Well, to put it in another way, what will your effort be and what will the activities be for you the second or third or fourth time you teach the class?
Yeah, the nice thing about doing the video editing yourself, people have done this in the past. They've spent, I think the State College has had a big program about 15 years ago where they made all these very heavily produced. They had it done by professionals, and they spent about $1 million per course. Not a single one is being offered today. Because if it's done by professionals, there's no way you can go back and change it. So here, every clip is about 20 seconds. And I can go, if I've done this already, so I've updated, I won't have time to show you, but I have some new data, and I just replace it. And it's much less investment once that's there. So I have data that shows the extent of the polar ice cap. And there's new pictures that I didn't have when I made it, so I added 4 more years of the polar ice cap. And doing that is, if you're doing it yourself and know how to do it, it's trivial.
Another quick question.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Could you say something about the technology for monitoring student performance?
Well, this goes into learning management systems. So in fact, you can see how they're doing immediately. I don't know if you've gone through any of those. It feeds directly into that. And so you can, and it's automated. Now, in terms of writing, and in terms of evaluating essays, that takes more work. You know. There's some ways, efforts trying to automate that and have it peer graded in these MOOCs, and that technology is underway, but it's not that as well proved as much. Is that what you're talking about?
We will have a future faculty panel on learner analytics where we'll get to explore some of these very issues and the challenges of working with SmartSight and then with other learning management systems as well.
So did you say you show this videotape and you're there so you can answer questions?
Oh, it depends. For the Israeli people, they would run through about it was done in a whole week. And so they'd run through about, in a day, about an hour and a half of these. And maybe 2-3 hours of those. And then I would be there for a half hour at the end of the day. And that was nice. I could do it from here in Davis. And so I just got up at 6 in the morning, and it was the end of their day. And so if they had questions about it, we would go over it. For my classes here, I have office hours. We do have review sessions before exams, and we do it via webinar.
You also have weekly discussion sections with TAs who
Right.
are familiar with the material.
Yes. So that, if you look at the response of the students, is that they felt that they were getting individual attention.
You have a syllabus for this course. Right?
Oh yeah, it's right on
So-
that site.
How
Yeah.
can we access that now?
Climatechangecourse.org. And see if I can get. So I think I've, Jim.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, I think a lot of.
Oh.
a lot
Here.
of faculty,
Here you go. Okay.
a lot of faculty dichotomize this face-to-face and the online, and maybe you could say something about the complementarity. Because aren't you now offering this both online and face-to-face?
Yeah, we're doing it this quarter. We have about 180 people face to face and about 50 online.
This concludes our examination of the direct effects of rock.
Okay.
Putting everything
Oh,
together.
you've seen this.
Stable isotope.
Okay. I'm not as familiar with this
A
machine.
wide range of
So,
organisms measure the
let me see if I go back.
concentration of their environment.
Okay.
Plans, as discussed in the preceding section,
Stop,
suggest
stop.
narrow apertures to minimize water loss per
Okay.
carbon.
Anyway. Okay, I've overstayed my welcome.